Good morning and a very warm welcome to this session on course design. We hope that you are enjoying the experiences which you are undergoing in the ECP. In this session today, we will initiate a series of activities which are called course design. So this session is split into two parts. Actually, this is not one session. This session is going to be a continuation of course design activity going up till 1:30. There are two themes that we are going to undertake in these two sessions. In the first theme, we will outline the meaning of course design. What exactly do we mean by course design? What is the placement of course design in our overall understanding of curriculum? How do we arrive at formulating objectives? What are the various factors that are needed to be kept in consideration? And what are the bases of formulation of course design? Then in the next session, we will talk about methods and media. Where do we derive the methods? What are the appropriate methods? How do we arrive at some conclusion regarding the appropriateness of the methods? How do we select the media which is required to transact the content which has been arrived at? These are some of the issues that we are going to take in these two sessions today. Tomorrow as well, you will have a session related to course design. So these are a series of activities and this forms a very important part of the extended contact program. In the beginning, I would like to introduce our faculty member from School of Education, Dr. Neerad Kumar Das, who is also the course coordinator for MES 102, which you know that it focuses on instruction in classroom. So this is related to that course, which is MES 102. Roughly we have decided to divide the time as follows. Till about 11:30 we will carry out a presentation and a discussion on some of the issues which we think need to be flagged in course design activities. We will also explain how this activity has to be carried out at the regional center, so there is a clarity amongst the participants and also the resource persons who are present in the regional centers. After about 11:30 we will be ready to take questions for this session till about 12 o'clock. I would now request Dr. Neerad to start with a discussion of course design, but before he does that, let us very quickly have a look at what exactly do we mean by curriculum. We have a definition which has been provided by Tanner. If you look at your screens, you will see that there is a definition of curriculum there. Let us start the discussion by focusing on this definition. Curriculum has been defined here as the planned and guided learning experiences and intended learning outcomes formulated through the systematic reconstruction of knowledge and experiences under the auspices of the school or college or university. Actually, this holds true for any level wherever education is being imparted, for the learner's continuous and willful growth in personal social competence. So there are certain things which need to be underlined here. First of all, we are talking here about the planned and guided learning experiences which lead to some intended learning outcomes which are formulated through systematic reconstruction of knowledge and experiences within a context, and the ultimate goal being the learner's continuous and willful growth in personal social competence. So Neerad, let us begin this session with a discussion on these things which have been highlighted in this definition of curriculum given by Tanner.
Thank you, Poonam. As has been mentioned in this definition and other definitions about curriculum, if we analyze most prominent definitions regarding curriculum, we arrive at four major characteristics of curriculum, and from this we can understand how curriculum is different from a course and how it is different from, or how a curriculum is sometimes understood as a program. So let us focus on four interpretations that have been arrived from different definitions. These four interpretations are like this: curriculum as a product. Then second is curriculum as a program. Then curriculum as intended learning outcomes, that is ILOs. Then curriculum as planned learning experiences. Now coming to the first one, curriculum as a product. When we say that curriculum as a product, that means it is it has some concreteness manifest in that. So what is that concreteness? Curriculum as a product, that means we can see the curriculum. We can see the curriculum. For example, when we ask that curriculum for PG diploma in higher education, curriculum for Bachelor of Education program, or curriculum for BA program, MA program, then what we mean? There we have something concrete in nature. So that whenever we ask for curriculum of some program, then there is some that this concrete product, they are manifested in the form of courses. So courses, different courses, they constitute the curriculum of a program. So these courses, they may be more than 2, 3, 4, and maybe sometimes 10 courses of a particular program. So these courses, they are independent, and while they maintain their independence, but simultaneously they also form all these courses, they form the composite part of the broad curriculum. So hence curriculum is a broad term, or a encompassing term, encompassing in nature, and it comprises different courses. So course, for example, in a school curriculum, we have a course on history, we have course on geography, we have course on mathematics. Similarly, in a BA curriculum, we have different areas: political science, economics, history, then sociology. So these areas, and they constitute the whole BA curriculum or BA program. So now coming to the other part, that curriculum as a program. As I have been telling, that curriculum sometimes viewed as a program. A program is again interchangeably used for curriculum. But when we say the curriculum as a program, it goes beyond that nature of courses. Here, apart from different courses which constitute the curriculum, we have other activities which are included in the curriculum. There we have, apart from these academic courses, we have other things, other aspects which are part of the curriculum. For example, there are so many co-curricular activities which are organized in colleges. They are like debates, drama, sports, visit, then campaigns, and many other things. These also, they constitute the part of the broader program or the broader curriculum. So basically curriculum here, when we say that curriculum as a program, it has broader connotation. But curriculum as course, it has a narrower connotation. Now the third dimension of curriculum is curriculum as intended learning outcomes. As expressed in the Turner's definition, curriculum as intended learning outcomes, there it has the dimension of curriculum processes. There are two dimensions. Curriculum as, for example, there are certain things related to curriculum. What? Curriculum related to what? Curriculum related to how. When we say that what of curriculum, there we have different course contents, different inputs that have to be decided, that have to be presented. That has to be decided. Then curriculum, the next part is curriculum. That is how part of curriculum. Here we are mainly interested in how curriculum is transacted, the methods, media, and the different strategies they are adopted to really execute the curriculum. The purpose is to achieve intended learning outcomes. Therefore, here the curriculum, when we say that curriculum as intended learning outcomes, it has the dimension of the what we are going to achieve at the end of the curriculum. So these are called integrated learning outcomes. So here curriculum is perceived as integrated learning outcomes.
Dr. Das, can I just interrupt you here to ask you a question that we are talking about course design activities here, and we also have in our IGNOU context what is known as a program, and there is also some kind of a confusion between syllabus and curriculum. So these are different terms which are being used with regard to curriculum, I think, which we also need to clarify so that there is no further confusion when as we go further on in discussions.
So that the same thing I have been discussing, that in the first dimension of curriculum as a product, that means here the curriculum as a product means the emphasis on course, a single course. There may be many courses in a particular curriculum or in a particular program, but all those courses in a program, they constitute, so course has a narrower connotation. Now we come to curriculum, last dimension that we have said, that curriculum as planned learning experiences. So when we say that curriculum as planned learning experiences, that perhaps we are going to talk about and we have to do today as part of the course design 1 activity. Planned learning experiences. Whatever we present through a particular curriculum or a course, they are basically learning experiences. That these learning experiences, they are provided to students in the form of a course or curriculum. So these learning experiences, they may relate to academic activities related to different course contents, or these learning experiences may relate to co-curricular activities, extracurricular activities, whatever, and many other things which the learner acquires when he is in college environment or in a higher education institutional environment. Apart from academic content, he acquires so many things through debate, through drama, through sports, through campaign, even through peer interaction, even engaging oneself in this student politics in the college. Yes. So many things, many experiences the student acquires, and all these experiences, they if they are learning in nature. When I say they are learning in nature, means those experiences which contribute to the positive shaping of human behavior, they are learning experiences. For example, if they don't contribute in positive shaping of student behavior, perhaps we may not say that those are learning experiences. So all those learning experiences, they have to be identified and planned. Then these learning experiences, they are put in the form of course, curriculum, and of course program. So what you have said, that syllabus. Syllabus, when we say that most of you are familiar that a syllabus of a particular course, generally there we have a brief mention of different contents. So it is a brief mention of different contents in a particular course, but course is, I think course is a broader dimension of syllabus. There we have many things translated in content form, but in syllabus we don't have that.
So what we are saying is that curriculum is the broadest possible category out of which we derive courses, and there is also syllabus, and in our IGNOU context, if we don't have to get confused, we would like to state here that in our context we say program, and program constitutes of different courses, but here when we are talking about course design, I think we mean it in relation to the curriculum which is there. So we have to take one course, which could be one paper as is commonly used in the conventional system. It could be teaching of modern Indian history, or it could be ancient history, or it could be physical geography. So that would constitute one course, and you have to design that in its various phases. Is that, I hope that is clear. Dr. Das, would you like to state anything here to further clear the confusion?
No, I think that as you have rightly said, that our focus is to have a course design activity, and here we have to select a particular course. Then generally the course which you are familiar with, or the course which interest to you, that you have to identify or select, and then the entire spectrum of activities that perhaps you are expected to do today and tomorrow and day after, that is related to that particular course. Here, the basic processes which are involved in development of curriculum, the same processes are also involved in design of a course. Therefore, when we discuss about course design, so those processes which are involved in curriculum development or design and development, they will be focused here as part of the course design activity. Now we come to the next slide, that is, are you talking of the model of the curriculum?
Actually, can we have a focus on the slide please here? We are talking about the basis of course design or basis of curriculum design also. I think we can here use it interchangeably, because as we have said that course is something which is derived out of the curriculum. So there is a common basis to course design and curriculum design also, but of course here we will restrict ourselves to course design. Now what is the basis of course design? How do we arrive at designing a course? What are the larger criteria or larger considerations which need to be kept in mind before we design a course? Now there are three considerations and we will go step by step into each one of this. The first is about the nature and structure of knowledge. How is the knowledge of a particular, in a particular area structured? What is the nature of that discipline, and what are the things which need to be kept in mind and which flow out of this peculiar nature which is there of a particular discipline? What holds true for teaching of science, for instance, will not hold true for teaching of social sciences in terms of the methods, in terms of the teaching learning strategies and so on and so forth. So this we will come to later. The second thing which needs to be kept in mind is the needs of the society, and thirdly of course the needs of the learner. Now before going further, let me clarify that when we view education, we need to view it not only as something which has a autonomy of its own, but it is also something which works in relation with other systems which prevail in society. Education can be viewed at two different levels. One is as a subsystem and second is as something which has a relative autonomy. But viewing it as a subsystem means that it is a part of the political, the economic, the social, overall spectrum which prevails in any society. So the needs and expectations from education are not only shaped by what happens at the national level in terms of the political nature of a particular state, the path of economic development which it has chosen to take, the social cultures, norms and values which prevail in that particular society, but it also is influenced by international developments which are taking place. So all these factors shape what the content of education is going to be, how it is going to be taught, what are the overall goals of education, what will be the goals of education. So these are the needs of society which in a way determine how education is going to proceed along which broader parameters. But at the same time we also need to keep in mind the fact that it also has a relative autonomy of its own, so that it is not in some kind of a total influence, but it only has to function with some relationship and connection with the other systems which prevail in society. So this is one school of thought which is very important in considering that education is a subsystem of the overall system in society, and it works in conjunction with other subsystems which form the basis of a particular society or a particular state in that sense. After the needs of society, the needs of learner are also very important. What are the needs of learner? Why should the learner undertake a particular, I'm sorry, this is a wrong slide, we will not see this. Let us start here, let us have a focus here. Let us start with the nature and structure of knowledge. I have already outlined three considerations which are very major. One is the nature and structure of knowledge, the other is the needs of the learner, and the third is the needs of society. So one by one, once again we'll have a look in detail now. Now selection of subject matter, the breadth, the scope of what is going to be taken up and selected for offering at a particular level is also extremely important, and it has to have some kind of a appropriateness and relevance with the overall structure of knowledge. You have to see that for a particular level, for instance in BA Honours at the first year, if we are doing one course which is say in political science, the Indian government, how does it overall conform to the BA political science curriculum at the undergraduate level? We have to see how much we need to focus. We also have to concentrate on the previous learning experiences and knowledge of the learners, and we also need to see the focus, that what is it that we are intending the learners to acquire after we give them a course on Indian government and politics. So selection of subject matter will depend on the placement of that particular course in the overall scheme of the curriculum which is being offered at a particular level, the breadth and scope of how much we want to take, again in relation with the overall curriculum. Then third consideration would be the previous learning experiences or the entry level behavior of the learners who come. What is it that they have already done before? Are they prepared? Is there a learning readiness to take a course of this nature? And thirdly, the theoretical basis of methods and approaches also will depend on the nature and structure of knowledge, which means that for science teaching, science is taught in a particular manner which is generalizations on the physical phenomena which happens. So if that is the character of science teaching or the nature of the discipline in science, what are the methods and approaches which have to be taken up for teaching of science? We take discovery method for example. There is also problem solving approaches which are taken. So the structure of the discipline will determine what exactly are going to be our methods and approaches for teaching that particular subject. Now three things here we have talked, very quickly we will run through it. Selection of subject matter, organization of subject matter or discipline. Organization basically means that going about it in a logical fashion, in a consistent fashion, going from the unknown to the known, from the known to the unknown, going from simple to complex, so that some structures are prepared which are ready to take information which is going from simple to complex, from known to the unknown, from concrete to more abstract. So this is how the organization of the subject matter has to be done, or the course has to be organized along these principles. So this will be one broad consideration when we are talking about the nature and structure of knowledge. Now let us come to the other two things which are remaining and which I had talked about. The second thing is here about the needs of the learners. Let us quickly see what are the needs of the learner here. Can we have a focus here? See, there are different needs of the learner here. One is the cognitive development, that how your thinking process is developed. How do you comprehend and process information and knowledge? That is a very important need for the learner for undertaking any particular program or course. Then second is about linguistic development, the language part of it, the communication part of it, the psychosocial development, overall what it does to your personality. How do you shape up individually? How do you behave in relation to the group? What are the various traits that you acquire? These are all part of overt curriculum and also hidden curriculum learning experiences that we had mentioned about and which take place within the formal setting. Moral or affective development, as you all know, these are related to the attitudes, the long-term behaviors, the beliefs and so on and so forth. So how do these get developed over a period of time? Do they lead to any positive change in the behavior of the learners and all that? So vocational focus, it is very important to develop those skills and competencies which lead to your being able to opt for some kind of a vocation or earning for, that is also very important, the economic aspect. besides the fact that it caters to survival needs, it also gives some meaning to be able to have something meaningful in terms of a job or a vocation. So these are the various needs of a learner which the course should cater to and look into. Once again, if we will quickly run through all the points which have been put up there, it is cognitive development, linguistic development, psychosocial development, affective or moral development, and finally the vocational focus, the skills and competencies required to be able to get a meaningful vocation or an occupation in the job market. So these are the various needs of the learners which the course should be able to look into and satisfy. Let us also go into the needs of the society now. Can we have a focus on this particular frame? Needs of the society, I have already stated that education has to be located in a particular context. It operates at two levels. One is the operation of education as a subsystem with regard to other systems which prevail in society. Other subsystems, all of them make together any society in a particular given point of time. Then education has some kind of a connection and interlinkages when it is working as a subsystem. But like I again I'm going to reiterate again, it is also a system which has an autonomy of its own. So there is that freedom available, but nevertheless when we look at it as a subsystem, we need to see how our course has to cater to the expectations which people have or the society has with regard to education. Now what are the needs of society that need to be fulfilled through education? First is the need for literacy. Any society would want the population to be educated. It would want that the skills of literacy, reading, writing, and even beyond that, higher order skills should be there with the majority of the population. So this is the first need of society, to have majority of its population as literate with adequate skills to be able to get into higher order thinking skills. Now secondly are the vocational skills. The economic system of the country, economic growth, how money is generated, how development takes place in a particular society, all that is linked to the vocational aspect. Now obviously human beings are also important resources which contribute and lead to economic development, and for that to happen, for economic development to happen, you need to have a population which has the required skills and competencies to be able to contribute to economic development. For instance, at this point in time, as we all know, that there is a lot of demand from the computer industry. So what is the expectation out of our education system? The expectation out of the education system is that it should be able to produce graduates, and also at a lower level such individuals who have skills and competencies and proficiencies in the operation of computers at various levels. These could be programmers, these could be software engineers, these could be hardware operations people, and so on and so forth. So these are the vocational skills which are expected that the education system will impart in the individuals which are undergoing training in formal institutions of learning. Now what is the next expectation which society will have apart from the literacy and development of vocational skills? Can we have a focus on the slide, please? Can we have a focus on the slide here? The third is about social order and morality. Now we all know that education performs two functions. One is the preservation of a social order of morality, and the other is also that it leads to change, because it gives us those kind of critical thinking components which leads to a change in society. While it preserves whatever has been passed on from generation to generation, at the same time it also does critical thinking so that some change is ushered in the society. But social order and morality is extremely important for providing stability to society. As we all know that societies need to be stable in most of the times, even though stability all the time, status quo preservation all the time is not good, because certain things which need to be changed, certain illnesses in society or certain bad practices of society also need to be changed, but they need to be changed in a manner that there is not much disruption or eruption in society. So a particular social order and morality needs to be stably kept and preserved, and this is what education is expected to do by transmitting those values, beliefs and attitudes which lead to stability in society and which lead to a preservation of social order. But at the same time, I am not saying that one needs to preserve social order with all its ills, but certain attitudes have to be developed so that society is stable. Interpersonal skills. Now, as we also know that in a report which has come up, which is also known as the Delors report, with regard to education, one of the very important objectives of education is being pointed out as learning to live together. Now, what is this learning to live together? Those life skills, those competencies which enable us to relate to each other in groups. This is very important for the harmonious development of any society, especially in the context of a heterogeneous nature. We know that society is not homogeneous, so in the context of a very pluralistic, multi-religious, multi-linguistic society, it is very important that individuals and learners who come to formalized institutions of education develop these interpersonal skills which will enable them to relate to each other and not lead to any conflict or strife. Then transmission of values and culture, I have already stated that this is preservation of the status quo or preservation of the values or the mores or beliefs which are passed on from generation to generation, and this is transmitted through education also. Education also enables individuals to acquire those attitudes and beliefs which help us to preserve what has been transmitted across cultures, across civilizations, across ages and generations. Creativity and innovation. Now this is very important. I would also like to add one more feature here, which is that of critically looking at whatever is there in society and which needs to be changed. We need to usher in changes in those aspects where, for instance, let me give you an example. In our own Indian society, in the social order, there are a lot of ills with regard to the caste system which prevails. This has been going on for a very long time, transmitted through generation to generation, and social order today is hierarchical still, even though education has helped in bridging these differences between different castes and so on and so forth, but enabling those critical attitudes and critical way of looking at the problems in society with a view to change those things is also a very important function of education. Creativity and innovation, expanding the frontiers of knowledge, doing research and development, which will lead not only to more economic development in the country but also further and which will expand the horizons of knowledge. We need today research and development not only in the industry. Normally research and development is a lot of people have this idea that it is related to development in terms of economic development and so on, but even in our own nature of understanding the phenomena, the social phenomena, the physical phenomena, the frontiers of science, the frontiers of social science, liberal arts, humanities and so on, going further and evolving new things and discovering new things is something which innovation and creativity is all about. And unless societies actively engage through higher education researches and so on, we will not develop individually, perfecting ourselves as individuals, and also lead to development of society. So these are the basic things which I think when we are designing our courses, we need to concentrate on: the structure and organization of the discipline, of knowledge of a particular discipline, the needs of the society and the needs of the learner. So I'll stop here, and now I would like to request Dr. Das to come and after this background and context that we have discussed, to start a discussion on formulation of objectives, the difference between instructional objectives, behavioral objectives, what is the function and role of objectives, how they should be formulated, and how you should be formulating this in the overall context of course design activity which you are going to undertake. Dr. Das.
Thank you, Poonam. Let me start with what Poonam has extensively narrated about the needs of society, learner, and the structure of knowledge and the subject matter. So, if we quickly sum up and have a very composite understanding of what Poonam has told. So, if we look at this slide, this slide perhaps is a reiteration of what she has very nicely presented, and if we very closely examine this slide, again it relates to need analysis for determination of course goal and objectives. Generally, the first stage in any kind of course design activity, the first thing is to have a detailed need analysis, a need assessment. Unless we have a detailed need assessment, then perhaps we cannot arrive at the broad goals and objectives, broad goals and specific objectives for that course. So, based on the two kinds of needs, basically social needs. Okay, Poonam has presented in a different form, but if we present them in a very broad form, then it will come to economic needs, political needs, cultural needs, historical needs, even sometimes religious needs, futuristic needs. So, these needs, they may again there may be more than that what we have presented here, or some needs may have relevance for some course, some needs may not have relevance for some other course. Now we have individual needs. Again, these needs are concerned with socio-economic needs of an individual, the very background, the socio-economic background of the individual, his personal aspects like interest, aptitude, then attitude, the intelligence, then maturity level, then vocational aspect. For example, vocational needs, that is more important for a person or for an individual. So, these are individual needs. Then when we come to social needs, then these social needs, they are manifested at 4 different levels. At the lowest level, we have local needs. And as you know that a course, when a particular we are developing a course for a local college, and it is sometimes required that the needs of the locality have to be spelled out in that particular course. Nowadays, you may be observing that many institutions or even national level institutions, they are very particular about developing courses suiting to the local needs, and because the intention is that the students who are enrolled in a local college or local institutions, after they pass out from that institutions, perhaps they can engage themselves in some fruitful activities which will give some type of earning. So therefore, many colleges and many institutions, even universities, they look into these local specificities and they develop local specific courses. Then we come to regional, of course, what we mean that state level, there are specific needs which are at the regional level, and the university system or the higher education system can address to those regional needs. Then the next in the hierarchy is national needs. These needs are very important because as you know that these needs, they come from various kinds of national requirements, national demands or needs. For example, the basic needs for a good society at the national level, they emerge from our constitutional goals and constitutional objectives. Apart from these broad constitutional goals, very often as the society progresses, evolves, And as we evolve because of the contribution of science and technology and other developments in different fields, these national needs also they grow day by day, and sometimes they have to be reflected in a course or curriculum. That's why recently, for example, in teacher education curriculum, you may be aware that our government wants many other pressing needs, that those which are to be spelled out in teacher education curriculum. For example, HIV AIDS is an area that perhaps has to be reflected in curriculum, and similarly environmental awareness, human rights, then inclusive education, many other things like this which are emerging now and then, and they have to be spelled out in not only in teacher education curriculum or in all curricula of college curricula as well as school curricula. So these national needs are very important. Then we have international, at the international level, there are developments at the international level because of science and technological development and the political development taking place from time to time, and many other developments which are of very importance to a student studying different types of curricula. So these international developments also have to be spelled out. If, for example, in computer sciences, the international developments take place very rapidly. This knowledge development takes place very rapidly. So while they are designing a curriculum for computer science, so all those developments in the area of computer science which are taking the developments which are taking place at the international level, they have to be presented in a computer science curricula, so that a student is kept updated as per the international development. So basically these are social dimension and individual dimension of need analysis. Then if you look at the slide, then there is a third dimension, that is nature of the discipline or the nature of structure of knowledge. That is very important. That also has to be kept in mind while designing particular course or curriculum, because as you know that teaching science is different from teaching social sciences or teaching literature or humanities. So each discipline has certain particular structure of knowledge. Science has a particular structure of knowledge, social science has a particular structure of knowledge, and literature has a particular structure of knowledge. Accordingly, this structure of knowledge also decides the type of goals and objectives to be evolved. And even the structure of knowledge also decides the kinds of methods and media that perhaps we have to take up later on. And this is very important. A detailed analysis of the structure of knowledge perhaps will give meaning to the formulation of goals and objectives. So this is basically what we intend to present to you about how social individual needs are analyzed, and then one has to also take into account the 4 levels: local, national, regional and international aspects, then nature of the discipline. Once this broad spectrum is understood, perhaps a course designer is in a position to arrive at the goals for that course. These goals, when we say about the goals, they are very broad, and this broad, if we look at the next slide, these goals are very broad, and we can say that broad educational goals. Goals, objectives, we have 2 types of things. One is goals and second is objectives. Goals are very broad. They are very abstract. Rather, one can say they are abstract, and they are basically deduced from the philosophy of the particular the philosophy that one has to adopt for a particular course. That philosophy, what we have described, they are arrived out from the social need analysis, then these goals, they also reflect the broad goals of the constitution of a country, and the constitutional goals, they can be also termed as the broad goals that have to be reflected in a curriculum. Apart from these broad goals which are constitutional nature or social nature, then certain things which are there, like in science. For example, development of scientific temperament, scientific attitude, which are broad goals. And these goals, when we talk of goals, they are aimed at in a curriculum and on a longer basis. For example, these goals, they cannot be achieved after a few days or after a few weeks, and the curriculum designer, the course designer always has a mind that these goals, they have to be achieved over a period of time. If, for example, one designs a course that has to be completed by a student in a period of say 3 years, for example BA course or BSc course, which have to be completed after a period of 3 years. So the broad goals, they have to be decided in such a way that after completion of that particular period, the student is able to achieve those goals. So these goals, broad goals, they are very important, and from these broad goals we arrive at general instructional objectives. If we look at the slide, general instructional objectives, they are arrived from broad goals, and they are relatively concrete in nature, but I cannot say that they are purely concrete in nature, but they give some sort of direction to the course designer. So about all these things we will discuss in detail on 23rd, when we talk about methods of teaching and detail about that, how from broad goals general instructional objectives are arrived. Then from general instructional objectives we come to specific instructional objectives. These specific instructional objectives, they are purely concrete in nature, and they can be measured, they can be seen, but general instructional objectives, they are a little bit abstract in nature, they cannot be measured. This is the difference between this. But combined, both these general instructional objectives, specific instructional, when they are combined together, they give rise to attainment of long-term goals or broad educational goals. So this is basically the 3 levels of goals and objective analysis, and what you are expected to do from the curricular and the analysis of social and individual needs, and having a concern for the structure of discipline or the nature of discipline. Then you have to come out with the broad goals, then general instructional objectives and specific instructional objectives. Now we come to the next point, that is about the 3 types of instructional objectives perhaps you have to formulate. Can I have the slide please? Here if we look at the slide, these instructional objectives, they pertain to 3 major domains of human abilities. I say that these are the 3 major domains of human abilities. As you know that we have 3 categories of abilities. One is cognitive abilities, and second is affective abilities, and third is psychomotor abilities. These are human abilities, and any kind of course or curriculum essentially intends to develop these 3 kinds of human abilities. And at the end of a course or a curriculum, our assumption or the assumption of course designer or curriculum designer or any kind of educational system, that the learner is equipped with the development of these 3 kinds of abilities. These cognitive abilities, which comes under cognitive domain. So these cognitive abilities, they essentially relate to the knowledge dimension of human abilities. Knowledge, that to know, the thinking dimension, basically thinking is of course reflected in others, but the knowledge dimension, basically cognition to know ability or knowing ability of human being. Then about this we will have a detailed discussion later on. Then the affective dimension or affective ability, they are related to feeling dimension or feeling aspect of human ability. And if you look at the slide, the third is psychomotor. Psychomotor, here two terms are involved. One is psycho, another is motor. Here basically our concern, or the concern here is the skill dimension. Skill dimension, which is very manifest, and here both cognition is involved and the motor activities are involved. For example, all kinds of lab work, any kind of handling something, or drawing, painting, many other things, even visual arts, performing arts, music, drama, many other things where the learner uses both the motor skills, and which of course has a linkage with the psycho part of human being. So it is related to basically outward skill of a particular person. So these three aspects, cognitive, psychomotor and affective, these are the three different kinds of abilities, human abilities, that perhaps have to be spelled out through our career course. So the objectives, generally when we talk of objectives, they are essentially related to these three domains or three categories of human abilities. So what you are requested to do, you have to identify the objectives based on these three major areas of human abilities. Once your objectives are formulated, then perhaps you go to selection of learning experiences. As we have already told in the beginning, that selection of learning experience, in one of the interpretation of curriculum definition, the last aspect we have told that curriculum as planned learning experiences. Basically, through a curriculum or through a course, we provide n number of learning experiences. These learning experiences, they are manifest in the form of contents. And when we talk about any kind of content in any discipline, say physics, chemistry, sociology, history, geography, math, what we tend to find? We find generally two types of contents. One is concept and another is proposition. Concepts, in a particular content you find different types of concepts. For example, photosynthesis is a concept, democracy is a concept, earthquake is a concept, distance education is a concept, many things. In all discipline, all areas of study, we have concepts, and perhaps we have to identify those concepts based on the analysis of objectives, because objectives, they give direction to identify the concepts. If, for example, we have to teach something on, say, in a geography course about that knowledge about earthquake, then earthquake becomes one identified concept in that particular area. Propositions, they are basically statements which have a combination of more than one concepts, but they give rise to a composite meaning. When I say that composite meaning, if a particularly these are statements and there you may find more than two concepts, they have certain kind of linkages. Without linkages between or amongst those concepts, a composite meaning cannot be arrived at. So that cannot be a proposition. In order to have a proposition, the statement must have some concepts linked together and they interact with each other to give rise to a composite meaning. So these propositions in a particular content, in a particular course of study, are of different kinds. For example, hypothesis. We have in in science courses and other courses, you may find different many propositions in the form of hypothesis, laws, theories, then principles, then generalizations, then facts. Many things are there in the form of statements, and these statements they have to be also identified, which again at the end have to form the part of the curriculum or course. Now, if we look at the slide, then once you are clear about what concepts, what ideas, or what events that you intend to teach to your students, and what type of laws, principles, generalization, theory, assumptions, there are many things. Particularly, again it depends upon the nature of discipline. If you are developing a course in science, perhaps you have to depend a lot of content related to hypothesis, theory, laws, etc. But in literature area, you may provide a lot of comparison, then similar kind of things. So now we come to once this is complete, then the next step, let us have this slide please. Then the first stage we have discussed identification of concept of proposition, specification of the scope of learning experiences. So once these concepts and propositions are identified, then we have to demarcate that what will be the scope of providing the learning experience, to what extent. When we say that the scope, because the same kind of learning experiences they are provided at different levels of education. For example, you may be aware that we have studied about certain concepts at school level in science, and the same kind of concepts are again taught to students at college level. That means the scope of learning experiences differs from school level to college level. So here, as a teacher or as a course designer, you have to specify that what will be the scope, what will be the limit within which that particular learning experiences have to be dealt with. Then once this learning experiences, the scope of learning experiences are demarcated, defined, then we have to write the content outlines, that what will the major content points that will form the part of the course. Then organization of learning experiences oblique content in a logical sequence. This is very important task. Then the task is like this, that once you have arrived at a set of concepts, set of learning experiences in the form of contents, so or propositions, then you have to write them in a logical sequence. This logical sequence is very important, because in a course, which concepts have to be taught first, which have to be taught next, and which have to be taught at the end of the course. This logical sequencing is one of the important tasks that course designer has to think of. And sometimes this sequencing also varies from discipline to discipline. So that perhaps the course designer with his background or with his specialization in that discipline knows about that which concepts have to be first dealt with and followed by which. So once this task is done, logical sequencing, the next one, let us have this slide again please. The next one is, slide please. The next is specifying instructional time to different contents. This is very important. In a course design activity, for example, at the end of content identification and content sequencing in the form of chapters or units, you have say 20 chapters or 20 units. So once this is finalized, then the designer will decide about the time, instructional time. Here we say that instructional time, the time which will be required to transact the particular content. That is basically instructional time. It will take care of the entire transaction process in order that that particular content is transacted and that transaction leads to the achievement of intended learning outcomes. That is again which we have already taught, which we have already discussed in the beginning. So this instructional time is very important, and this instructional time has to be very judiciously calculated or arrived at. It is not that arbitrarily you can give say some amount of time to chapter 1 or some amount of time to the. This depends on a thorough content analysis as well as the objectives to be achieved. So after that, selection of instructional strategies. Then we come to the next task, which is part of this activity. What are the different strategies that perhaps we have to suggest to the future user of the course as instructional strategies? These are only suggestive, because whatever strategies you suggest to the user or practitioner of this particular course may or may not be adopted by the user. But it is good that you may suggest some instructional strategies for the user or practitioner of that particular course. So basically in course design 1, we will confine our activity to these few steps, and after that this will be followed by course design 2. Now I think Poonam will
Thank you, Dr. Das. I think it must be quite clear to you what is the nature of activity you have to undertake. After this discussion now, we've almost completed the discussion, and by now probably there is a clarity as regards the purpose and nature of activity which you have to undertake. This will be an individual activity which all of you have to do. You have to decide on the discipline, obviously from the background that you come from, and depending on all these considerations which we have outlined and discussed over here, you have to initiate the process of course design. It is almost 11:30 now, in fact it's 11:35 nearly, and at this time I think we would like to throw open this discussion for inviting questions from your side. If you have any clarifications, or if you have anything to add, or if you want to say something about the presentations which have been going on from here since morning, we would like to invite your comments and observations with regard to the discussions which have gone on here since morning. I would request learners at various regional centers to please start dialing in to get clarifications or make observations or make comments, etc. on whatever we have discussed here since morning. So Neeraj, basically this activity has 4 parts. Is that right? We start with course design, which consists of the context, the background, and deriving from the context and background we go on to the formulation of instructional objectives. Students have to very precisely formulate in behavioral terms objectives which will then lead to another activity which is about the methods and strategies to be employed for achieving those objectives, and also the selection of media which will be based on a certain set of criteria which we will discuss in the next session. The third activity, which is also related to course design and which we are going to discuss tomorrow, will focus. Yes, Koraput, please come up with your question. We are ready to take your observation now, or question, whatever it is. Koraput, please.
Thank you, Poonam. The discussions are going on nicely, but I was thinking that if it could have been structured a little better, it would have been more comprehensive, and the discussions could have centered around that structure. Well, I still feel that course design being one of the important activities of the ECP, it has possibly not been very well discussed in the course material, and therefore I have a feeling it requires a separate booklet to fully devote to different activities and aspects of course design. And if that can be mailed, to all students either or to the regional centers, it could be of great help. Course design I find takes a lot of time in our schedule of the ECP. It possibly requires a separate booklet fully devoted to discussions on course design. The slides, in fact, that Dr. Das had been presenting were very good ones, but the color combination was not that prominent, and therefore the participants sitting at this end, it became difficult for them to have a clear view of it. I request that the slides be not made of, the letter combination, the letter font. It should have a different letter font and different color combination. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Dalai, for that feedback. See, basically, I am not too sure whether I'll agree with you on preparing a separate booklet for course design, because, as you know, this activity is not only confined to ES or MES 102. It is also related to MES 101, 102 and 104 also. If you see, there are certain portions in the last block of MES 104 which is regard to the planning and management of the curriculum, that we have talked about a lot of things like the educational needs, where do they come from, the objectives, how do they have to be formulated, not only that, the needs of society, the needs of learner, and also how the nature of content has to be selected depending on various criteria like relevance, scope, and so on and so forth. So all this is also discussed to a very great extent in MES 104. Similarly, MES 101 forms a very broad background against which educational processes generally take place, and also our courses are designed. So coming to 102 precisely, we have discussed methods and media, formulation of instructional objectives, assessment and evaluation techniques, and so on and so forth. So I think we are already concentrating a great deal on, though not at one place, but at 3 different places. So let us take the call from Vadodara. Yes, please.
We are here at the Baroda Regional Center, and I want to throw some light on needs for the learner, that is the psychosocial development. So please explain with some example. Thank you, madam.
Dr. Das, psychosocial development we have spoken about as the need of a learner. So what is it that we mean by it, and we need to give an example.
Actually,
yes, yes. There's a call from Cochin also. I think we'll put both the calls together. Cochin. Cochin, Regional Center, are you there?
Hello.
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Does curriculum material need to focus into social progress and social integrity aspect also?
Yes, please go on.
That was the question, ma'am.
That social progress and social integrity needs to be also focused on when we are talking
So
about.
these aspects also need to be focused in.
that we agree.
Okay, yes, that is true. Yes, Dr. Das.
We cannot disagree with your statement that social progress, social integrity also should be part of course design process, because as we have already shown through our slides that social needs, one of the more important aspect of social need analysis is the integration, that even that national integration we talk of, or social integration, even this social cohesiveness, and the social progress, the developmental process which taking place in society from time to time. Though basically when we say that perhaps curriculum is the mirror of a society, that if we extend the statement you have made, that we can describe as that the curriculum is the mirror of the society, and through a particular now there is a
Yeah, I think we'll take a question from Koraput before we answer that psychosocial development and need of the learner. Yes, Koraput?
I am Dr. N. Pradhan, resource person of this center. You have actually mentioned nicely that while designing a course, the need of the learner, need of the society, and structure of knowledge should be reflected. But whether while designing the course, we should mention or outline the need of the learner, need of the society, and structure of knowledge, or will reflect them while formulating instructional objectives, whether broader objectives or general objectives and specific objectives. Because there is no separate booklet on this, because most of our participants are they belong to different disciplines other than education. They do not have very clear idea about this. So kindly say whether we will reflect these needs separately or reflect them in the objectives. Thank you.
Dr. Pradhan, I think that's a very pertinent question, but I think we need to reflect them in the objectives that we formulate rather than doing it separately. And what we were trying to say is that these form the consideration for formulation of objectives. When we formulate, this is the background. So I think we need to put it together, all these considerations, and reflect them in the formulation of the objectives. There's another call from Bhopal. We'll take Bhopal also. Yes, Bhopal?
Hello?
Yes?
You have taught us about the curriculum as a learning outcome and as a curriculum as a planned learning experience. Can you tell us something more about that, sir? That was really encouraging, sir. Please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bhopal. I think we should first take that question regarding the psychosocial development and need of the learner, that how is it a need?
Yeah, this question is from Vadodara. The psychosocial development is one dimension or aspect that has to be also kept in mind while analyzing needs. Basically, this aspect pertains to individual dimension of need analysis. That as you know that the child, as he or she grows, then there are certain developmental processes he passes through. These developmental processes, they pertain to psychological, mental, physical, social, and many other aspects. So when we say that psycho aspect relates to the child's attitude or the student's attitude, aptitude, interest. So these aspects which are related to the psychological aspect of the child, later the child when he comes to college level, he becomes a young adult. This attitude, interest, aptitude, and many other psychological attributes, particularly these are psychological attributes, they grow or develop from one stage to another. And as a person grows in age and comes to adulthood, and particularly at the college or university level when he is a young adult, so that time these psychological attributes are very important for the composite or holistic development of a human personality. So the college system or the higher education system should also address the needs of psychological dimension of human personality. Similarly, as you know that we are also social being, and as we also grow, there are certain social attributes which grow in us, and at the college level when the learner is in young adulthood stage, he or she develops n number of social attributes and social skill, and these social skills, they are very important for developing a balanced personality. So when we talk about psychosocial development, so all those attributes or dimensions which contribute to the development of a balanced and holistic personality, that aspect also should be reflected in a course or in the development of a course, that this course or the curriculum should provide ample scope for development of this. So how these aspects are developed? That's why when we say that curriculum is not only these academic inputs provided through courses, but also n number of learning experiences which are organized in college and learning environment. So participating in debate, participating in sports, participating in different kinds of activities which are organized in college will contribute to the development of social skills, social attributes, and of course at the college level the learner also forms some sort of attitude to the fellow, to peers, to teachers, to the society, to nation, and to different objects, events and phenomena. So this, what we say, psychosocial development, which also has to be addressed. Then there was a question which perhaps relates.
So basically we are talking about the curriculum imparting those kind of skills and competencies which lead to a balanced development of a balanced and holistic personality, and also yes, and also impart those skills which are very crucial in a group behavior, in a dynamics of a group. So those attributes are also the needs of the individual. The individual also wants to be able to acquire these abilities to be effectively behaving in a group and also self-actualizing in certain ways. So these needs have to be met through the curriculum that we are designing. There is a call from Chennai now. Chennai?
Yeah, call is coming up.
Shiva from Chennai Regional Center.
Yeah.
Good morning, ma'am. In India, in most of the universities, the curriculum and the syllabus is not uniform, especially in updating the course content. How to overcome this challenge to globalization?
Curriculum updation. That's true. That first will take up Bhopal.
I think that's a very crucial question that you have addressed here. But before coming to your question, we will also like to address the role of the teachers in bringing about the desired and necessary changes as far as the updation of the curriculum is concerned, and why it takes such a long process, the presence of various bodies and things like that. But before that, we like to address the question which had come from Bhopal, which is about that planned set of experiences. When we call curriculum that, what is it that we mean by curriculum being a planned set of intending outcomes and so on?
Actually, this question is related to the definition which was presented by Poonam, the Tanner's definition. There Tanner has given two dimensions of curriculum as intended learning outcomes and as planned learning experiences.
Can we have the
So there is a basic difference that when we talk about curriculum as intended learning outcomes, there if you relate to the three different human abilities, that is cognitive, psychomotor and affective, that means knowledge, skills and attitudes. These three things, knowledge, skill, attitudes, these are the three different abilities that have to be. So these are basically the intended learning outcomes. At the end of curriculum process, these learning outcomes have to be. So curriculum is seen in that sense. Again,
and it is also a deliberate exercise which is taken, so in that sense it's a plan.
That goal. And then when we say the planned learning experiences, so all the learning experiences which are intended to be provided through curriculum, they are decided by the course designer, and later on they are executed or transacted by the teacher in classroom situation.
Yes.
So basically the entire curricular curricular processes, right from design to implementation part, and even to evaluation part, these learning experiences, they hover around all the three important stages of course or curriculum.
There's a call from Bhubaneswar. Yes, Bhubaneswar.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning, please.
B.K. Mahapatra from Regional Center, Bhubaneswar. My question to Dr. Das.
Yeah.
Dr. Das, while talking on instructional objectives,
Yeah.
you suggested a table on the slide which suggested social needs, individual needs, but the middle column has no heading, no labeling.
Yeah.
Can we call it topographical need?
That's a fine
And
suggestion.
another question from my friend. Good afternoon. Myself Satyan from Bhubaneswar.
Yeah.
Actually, nowadays the Indian society and culture and environmental science, these papers are included in UG courses as a compulsory paper. But what happened, we are seeing that in most of the professional courses like management, IT and computer science like courses, students are not at all interested to sit in these classes. We are trying our best, but most of the classes are lying vacant, no students are sitting. Okay, their argument is that actually these are no way helpful in our professional career. So is it advisable that we can minimize the course? That means or we can minimize the course. That means without having a 100 marks paper, can we make it 50 marks? And can we take steps so that it will not be included in their aggregate marks, so that they will be beneficial their technical marks? And my second question is that for the science and technology courses, we are trying to include the latest technologies which are helpful for their professional career. But what is seen that for the latest technologies we are lacking of competent and trained faculties. So we are thinking that it is better to add these type of courses, but if we are adding, after that we are not getting the faculty, so which one is better? The traditional pattern is better, or it is better to add the new courses? Thank you, sir.
Yes, we'll take Chennai also. Yes, Chennai.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
The objectives of course designing, the components of social needs you have mentioned as economic needs, political needs, cultural needs, historical needs, religious needs, and futuristic needs. In case of religious needs, it is highly debatable. When our country is secular, and at least the education is the important component, that should be free from religious components and all. I think it is highly debatable here. When we are thinking to completely remove away the religion from the education part, this religious need not be considered here, in my view. What do you think about, please?
Yes, Chennai, that's a very pertinent question and we'll answer that. Let us start from Bhubaneswar. Bhubaneswar has come up with a suggestion of labeling that empty column as topographical. I don't think it is really topographical in that sense. It is not topography per se, though we are talking about the various levels where it obtains the international, national, regional and local, but there is a lot of dynamics apart from the fact that it originates in the international. International also comprises of economics, politics and also advances in the nature of particular disciplines in a particular direction, depending on the economics and the political also. So just to designate them as physical entities and physical levels, I don't think we'll be able to capture the dynamics which is involved. Chennai has raised a very pertinent question about religious needs. Now in the sense that we had presented, it is not a question of catering to each and every individual's religious needs in that sense, even though I might like to add here, there are specialized programs being offered everywhere in the world regarding the history of religion or some discussion on the religious thoughts and so on. The idea being that ability to read up the other religions gives you and lends you that secular perspective which is so much required in a society like ours. Everywhere in the West and even in our own university, we have in MA courses in history of religions, which gives us an idea about what other religions are talking about, so that we are able to appreciate the sentiments of other religions also. So it is not about the religious needs of me coming from a particular religion that I need to see. In fact, it's about broadening and my ability to get that appreciation which will enable me to see all other religions, which is the constitutional need also, which is that of formulating a secular society. Even to be able to define secularism, we need to have a definition which accommodates all religions and all religious beliefs, and to that extent develops in a certain sensitization towards and also an appreciation towards other religions. So I don't think it needs to be really interpreted in its narrowest sense possible. These are, our intention was to be able to reflect some sensitization, some kind of a sensitivity, development of the competencies for a pluralistic and a multi-religious society. In our context, we are interpreting it in the very way that the Constitution has interpreted, but for that also we need to read religions. Secularism does not come about on its own. It needs an appreciation of the other religions also. So my religious need also could be to be able to know the other religions. It's not really to be pinned down to an individual's religious needs. I don't think that you need to take it in that sense, and that is also not the intention. However, if that is what is being conveyed, we can even while explaining, we can extend this explanation right at that point so that further confusions are not there. Dr. Das, there was another question about EVS course being compulsory, but why should it not be made at the sensitization or awareness level rather than it's leading to a grade and so on, and the students not being really interested. And then we also had another question which was about the nature of the engineering and technology courses and the faculty that we have over there. Would you like to take those questions?
Okay, about this environmental sciences and with then IT knowledge, information technology knowledge, and all these things now they are growing day by day, and in most course design and curriculum design process, the government wants, the country wants that they should be reflected in different courses. The same thing also happens in teacher education curriculum. Every now and then in teacher education curriculum we come across different concerns, social concerns. For example, as I have said, HIV/AIDS, then environmental awareness, then human rights, and many other things day by day. But the question is that how much the course designer or the institution, the university system can cope up with this requirement, this demand, and how much we have to present to our students. That is a big question. Perhaps as teachers or course designer we have to think of and address. There are different debates on this. Should we give extra courses to our students, or should we integrate all these components in different existing courses and present them through our transaction process, so that there is no overload on this and the students are not also overburdened to read more courses or more extra inputs in that course. So this is it.
Dr. Das, I would just like to say about, there is a sudden this thing which comes to my mind with regard to the Chennai question about religious needs. If you see, there are chairs about Sikh studies, there are centers of Islamic studies. If as a Buddhist I want to know more about my religion, there are courses in Buddhism which are being offered. So in our universities also, there are programs on religious studies which are being offered. Nothing wrong with it. If as a Buddhist I want to know more about my religion, there are programs being offered. There are centers of Islamic studies, center of 6 studies which have been specially created. There are chairs in universities currently also. So I don't think that religion needs to be really, taken out and thrown out of the ambit of furthering our knowledge about religions. Yes, Srinagar. Yes, Srinagar, please come up.
Question is, good morning. My question is with regard to the psychomotor development, that is the skill dimension. So as a teacher of chemistry or English in the college curriculum, how can we incorporate or extend the skill dimension, which is the need of the hour?
That's true. Chemist as chemistry.
And my second question is with regard to the cultural needs, both at national level as well as local level. Because our country is multicultural country, and when we move from one place to other place, the culture changes, everything changes. So how we can incorporate in our curriculum the tinge of national as well as international and local culture, so that we don't lead ourselves into confusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Srinagar. Let me just come to the point that you have raised in the latter part of the question, which is about incorporating the local cultures and all that. Let me tell you, give you an example. For instance, specifically talking about the context of Srinagar, if we have to incorporate the local culture in, say, literature, we could be teaching a course on Lal Ded, the very famous poetess in Srinagar. Similarly, there has been a tradition of Sufi poets in the valley. So those can be incorporated while teaching humanities and literature. Similarly, when we are talking about the regional geography, when we are talking about geography, regional geography, regional dimension of geography can be incorporated into the curriculum. So this is one way in which we can incorporate the local context and the local cultures into the curriculum. Dr. Das, you were saying something with regard to the question from Bhubaneswar. In 1 minute, will you wind up that so that we have almost come to the end of the session here?
About that question from Bhubaneswar, I have already told that the course designer has to decide, or it should be a policy. Rather, I think that in what way, whether we will go for, as the person has already said, that students are not interested to read more courses on science and technology and the latest development. Then the another question is that those advanced scientific and technological knowledge which are provided in a curriculum, the teachers are not trained to handle. That is another dimension which is emerging. So that perhaps has some relevance when we talk about methods and media next session. So unless a teacher is well equipped with the knowledge and skills to handle a particular chunk of knowledge which is part of the curriculum or course, perhaps that is again a great question. And the students' interest, the teacher's ability, all these things, they are issues which have to be addressed while designing the curriculum. Even if we decide that latest knowledge has to be part of the ever-evolving curriculum process, accordingly, this demands n number of requirements in terms of teacher training, teacher updation. Some question was on teacher updation, so that is another issue that one has to also address. Even in terms of transaction procedure, in terms of evaluation. So basically all these things which are decided in the beginning of a course, they decide the entire spectrum of activities that have to go later on. So this is a valid point, and I appreciate the concern of the student participant who has raised. And another thing that from Srinagar about these 3 dimensions, how they can be developed in chemistry curriculum, and as I know that knowledge, then feeling and skill, psychomotor, these 3 dimensions, they can be developed in any kind of curriculum. Even in science curriculum, certain kind of attitude, if perhaps the teacher feels that it is difficult, but these two students develop some sort of scientific attitude, the scientific thinking. When the student is involved in the process of experimenting in a lab, he develops certain kind of scientific abilities, scientific thinking. So all the three components of this abilities, human abilities, can be developed in any kind of curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Das. We have come to the end of the session here. The next session will begin with the discussion on course design 2, which is on methods and media. We'll start the session at 12:15 and we'll take a break for about 10 minutes. Thank you very much.